Aryn said, hey, I'm kind of interested in exploring with men. I said, hey, Aryn, do you know what? I'm ready for this. Fast forward a year after I told that to Aryn kind of subtly revealed that she hadn't flirted with someone because she didn't want to make me upset. I think then I just thought that by saying, hey, Aryn, you have permission now to do this, that was enough. And I think in our dynamic, and in a lot of people's dynamic, that's not enough. Because the last thing that Aryn wants to do is hurt me. After I saw Aryn say that she couldn't even flirt, I was like, fuck, okay, I need to make this happen.
Hi everyone, welcome to Polycurious. I am Fer, relationship coach and host of this podcast. And today I'm talking to Aryn and Josh from Couples Therapy. Now, if you haven't watched this show, you have to. If you're a Polycurious fan, this will totally be up your alley. It is a documentary show that films actual couples therapy and how Orna, the therapist who's incredible, helps them. I will make sure to include a link in the show notes if you want to check it out. And even though the show, as the name states, deals with couples, Aryn and Josh, my guests today, actually went with a third person, Lorena, who has actually also been interviewed for Polycurious. So I will also link that episode. I interviewed Lorena with one of her partners at the time, Aviva, and Aviva's partner. And when I interviewed Lorena, she was already partnered with Josh. Lorena and Josh have since broken up. And in this show, they explore that relationship, right? Where Josh is partners to Aryn and partners to Lorena, but Lorena and Aryn are not partners to each other. And how they dealt with non-hierarchy, with feeling prioritized or deprioritized. Super interesting. And today we don't really talk too much about that. We do talk a little bit about their experience in the show by the end of the episode, but today it's all about Josh and Aryn and their experience being polyamorous for around a decade at this point. And they have gone through all types of different non-monogamous arrangements, having a triad, dating couples, doing kitchen table poly, doing non-hierarchies. But today we focus the conversation on two things: their experience forming a triad and Josh's process allowing men into their relationship. So you probably heard about the one penis policy. There's a lot of bisexual women in non-monogamous arrangements where their male partner says, I'm okay with you or us being intimate or romantic with women, but I'm not okay with men. Part of it has to do with patriarchal ideas of men owning women. But in Josh's case, his hesitation around Aryn dating other men had to do with his distrust of men in general. We talk a little bit about his process in becoming more comfortable with that, also kind of pushing Aryn to take that step. So if you're in that process, if you're a man who's looking to get over the one penis policy, get over your patriarchal ideas, your toxic masculinity issues, this episode might be helpful to you. There was so much more I wanted to talk to them about, and unfortunately we were at a studio in New York. By the way, this was recorded back in November, so it's been quite a while. And we had to cut the conversation short. But don't you worry, there'll be a part 2. So if you haven't already, just make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you can stay tuned. Now, if you find this episode interesting and you think that someone might benefit from it, please make sure to share it. Also, if you guys have any questions for Josh and Aryn for our part 2, please feel free to email me at polycuriouspodcast@gmail.com or reach out to me on Instagram at polycuriouspodcast, and I'll do my best to get them to answer those questions for us. Without further ado, here is my interview with Aryn and Josh from Couples Therapy. So Aryn and Josh, welcome to Polycurious. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thanks for having us. We've definitely explored so many different ways of doing poly and non-monogamy over the decade, and it's evolved as we have evolved. So Yeah.
Yeah, we've made mistakes. We've have a lot of learnings. Our experience continuously changes based on the partners that we have or the other poly people or non-monogamous people that we come across.
Yeah, and I think it's also getting comfortable with it being different for everyone, and the point of the podcast is to show many different ways of doing it so people can be like, okay, I resonate with that. I do not resonate with that at all.
Totally.
So we'll get into all of that. But before we do that, anything that you want the listeners to know about you? I mean, we're in New York right now. You have interesting careers and things you do if you want to share that.
Sure. Okay. Currently, I am a circus artist performing all around the world. I do contortion. I studied Mongolian contortion for about 10 years. And I do foot archery as a part of that. And I also do hair hanging, Chinese pole, duo acrobatic unicycle, and hand-to-hand or partner acrobatics.
Yeah, and for listeners who might not know what half of those things are, she's incredible. Like, I've seen you perform at, events and festivals and stuff that we've been part of, and it's just incredible to see. It's really amazing.
Thank you. I've done this professionally for about 3 to 4 years. Before that, I was a product designer, experience designer, running an agency with a friend, designing mobile apps specifically about weather and data visualization. So I love the multiplicity of experiences that life has to offer. And I think that also comes into play in my romantic and sexual life. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Josh, what about you?
So I work for a foundation. The foundation focuses on 3 different movement areas: criminal justice reform, democracy, and mental health. I run strategic initiatives for the foundation. And there's also a venture studio called Galaxy Labs. And we create companies, for-profit, nonprofit, and political, that in some way or another strengthen or accelerate those movement areas. And so I've been doing that for almost 5 years now. It's been unexpected for me. I came from a tech background, and then in 2020 I found myself needing to do something with some friends in the political space. And that kind of set me on a trajectory to joining this foundation and, doing some really, really, really interesting work trying to help as many people as possible.
Yeah. Sounds like you both have that tech background and being like, okay, now I want to do something that feels a little bit more meaningful. Tell us how you guys met.
Josh and I met in San Francisco about 10 years ago, and we got burritos. We met originally through OkCupid, and immediately I really valued his interest in building community and understanding people, creating a safe space for people, and his, sense of adventure and traveling. And so I invited him to a circus show that was going to be at my house that Friday. That was how we met. And then about a year and a half later, we moved to New York together. We both wanted an adventure, and we got that. Josh, you want to add to that?
No, do you want to tell more about how you got to polyamory, or how you're the origin story of you and this sort of lifestyle?
Yeah. So I always felt that I was different. I had a different perspective on relationships. Starting from high school, I remember my high school boyfriend was devastated one day, and he was like, I need to tell you something. And I was like, what? He was like, I'm attracted to a girl on the track team. And I was like, yeah, she's cute. Cool. And he was so upset at me that I wasn't jealous. And I was like, that made no sense at all to me. I was like, she's cute. She's nice. Okay. He didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
At all. That's where I really saw a clear divergence in how I saw relationships and how he saw relationships. He thought it would be a sign of love if I was protective over his love for me and no one else.
Yeah, people confuse possessiveness with love when if you actually think about it, if you really love someone, as they say, you let them go, you let them be free. That's what really love means, not possessing them.
Yeah. So, but I was monogamous with him, and I was monogamous with a handful of partners up until college, when I just didn't even know the word polyamory, but I liked this one guy and I was dating him. and I like this other guy. And I was like, hey, went to the first guy and was like, how do you feel if I am hanging out with this guy? I like him. And he was like, okay. I just got everyone on the same page that I was interested in both people. And they were like, okay, that makes sense. So I just was dating two people at the same time, which I thought was like reasonable, and they thought was reasonable. And apparently other people thought that I was poly, and I didn't even know that term. Fast forward till Josh matched with me on OkCupid. Apparently he heard through a mutual friend that I was poly who knew me in college, even though I didn't even use that term for myself at the time. And yeah, he almost didn't go on the first date with me because he was scared, or that didn't align with his understanding of what he wanted to have in relationships. And but I'm so glad he did.
So why were you a little hesitant to enter into poly at that point?
Yeah, it's funny because now, like many years later, Aryn would be like, you had it in you, right? Like she's like, I knew that you had the openness and the ability, and maybe the thing that you really needed to sharpen up was your communication. Mm-hmm. And that's so true, right? I think like for me, my background in dating and what it was like to be in relationship with people was like very much lots of dating multiple people, right? And I think in the beginning, like if I think back to high school, my small friend group, we would always hang out, and very often we would just all hook up with one another. I actually remember when I moved to San Francisco when I was 21, I had moved with an ex, and with her, we even on Facebook, we had defined our relationship as an open, you know how they had that in the Facebook, you can put it like in an open relationship with, which is funny because I feel like if anyone actually asked me what that meant, I don't know if I would have had a good answer. As we fast forward, it seems more obvious that I had more of a disposition towards this kind of openness. But I would say that before I met Aryn, there was one person who I was really in my mind, I was telling myself I want to have a really strong monogamous partnership with. I'm going to take a big swing at this. I'm going to try really hard. All my upbringing of what it was like to be in high school, hooking up with all my friends, what my, few years of college of what it was like to be intimate in relationships with. I'm now like, in my early 20s, I'm going to try and be monogamous. I started dating this one person where we had incredible compatibility. I felt that this was somebody who hit my criteria of somebody I really wanted to devote myself to. And I was feeling the most monogamous I'd ever been. She was like not trusting of me and not trusting of men in general. And she didn't trust me from the beginning, right? She had really a ton of hang up. And I was like, no, I'm so monogamous. Like I'm here. I'm like super committed to this. And that relationship ended up like crashing and burning just because of that distrust. And
was it partly because she knew that you had been open in the past?
No, I actually think it was completely independent of me. And that took me on a journey of just saying, like, I'm going to give this monogamy a shot. And then that relationship ended, and I'm on OkCupid, and I matched with Aryn. And we have already her profile, everything about how she presented herself. I was like, whoa, this is somebody I really feel I feel like I can have an incredible connection to. We set up some plans, and I realized that we had a mutual friend. And that mutual friend, I immediately reached out to her and I was like, hey, who's this person? I matched with them. I'm excited to have lunch with her. And she's like, oh, yes, Aryn, she's poly. You know she's poly, right? And I had no idea, right? I wasn't familiar with that term. And it's just funny because Aryn wouldn't have identified as that. And I was like, damn, I'm really trying to do this monogamy thing.
But why were you trying to do the monogamy thing, even though it didn't work with that person that
I think
you?
I think it was me just trying it. Because I think it'd been like really the first time in my life that I was like, I'm going to transition from just dating to more seriously.
Right. So you thought that like if you wanted to commit, that meant
monogamy. Exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
We have so much cultural pressure.
Yeah.
And to think that if you're serious about someone, it means monogamy.
Right. Like, I'm going to stop fucking around.
Yes,
like, that was in my 20s. Now
I'm going to grow up. I got to be an adult now. And I have to, do what is expected of me. And I met Aryn and I was like, holy shit. Okay, well, I'll get over whatever I got to deal with because this person is so incredible, and I'm excited to kind of just pull on the thread of what is the potential here. And, you know, first date, second date, third date, we become incredibly entangled and really excited about one another. For the longest time, we like called ourselves non-monogamish, right? Which is a very common thing that when people are starting off, they self-identify as, right? We're exploring what it's like. Yeah. We don't know what that means, but it's definitely not like completely open. It's like lots of, you know, boundaries and restrictions and what feels good and what doesn't. I remember in the initial time of meeting Aryn, I swear, knowing Aryn and how good she is at communicating, I for sure morphed what she told me into something else. But I remember having these conversations with Aryn, trying to make sense of, okay, what does our relationship actually look like long term? In my brain, I morphed it into, this is about exploring together, and this is about us feeling connected and doing things that enrich our relationship, right? I was like, okay, if we're doing this in service for our relationship, then I can get on board with that. And fast forward a few months, I have this schema in my mind of how this relationship's going to go. And I'm in like a group of friends, and I ask some of the friends, you know, what their experience with openness is, you know, whatever. And Aryn overhears me kind of describing this idea around we do it to enrich our relationship, right? We do things together. If we're going to be intimate with other people, it's going to be together. If we're going to explore, it's going to be together. And, you know, that night, she kind of pulled me aside after my friends had left, and she goes, hey, I don't think I said that. And I remember my internal schema that I had created completely collapse. She goes, I don't mean that necessarily. I mean, we'll enrich our relationship because we're taking care of our needs, but it's together or not together, you know, everything's kind of on the table in the future. And I remember being like devastated. And we were near the Bay Bridge. On a pier at night, wind blowing in our hair. Completely, me catastrophizing this like, fuck, what did I actually sign up for, right? If it's not in service of our relationship, and we're not doing things together, what does that actually mean for how we're going to engage and kind of explore the future and partnership? And Aryn essentially kind of, once I said all my fears and how this didn't feel so aligned with what I thought we were creating, Aryn was like, well, now you know. So what's the deal? Are we doing this or are we not? And I was like, fuck. I was like, now that you know, like what I might want, do you still want to be with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was I remember feeling particularly brave asking you that question so clearly and vulnerable. And then you said yes.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And so then my schema was the right schema, right? My internal framework for how I was viewing the way in which we were going to relate to each other and other potential partners, right? And so Aryn at the time was really curious to explore with other partners and other people. And we started off, okay, how do we do this in a way that we ease into this? So we start dating for a few months. It goes really, a few more months. It goes really well. We're thriving. We're feeling super connected. So Aryn had then a few months later said, hey, I'm interested in having another person, or my novelty-seeking side of my brain is really excited. Let's maybe explore having a threesome or whatever. And I go, okay, here we go. We're starting this. We're going to start this exploration phase.
What was giving you so much anxiety?
I just think not necessarily knowing how to explore it and honestly, how it was going to change our relationship.
Yeah, it's like a threatening idea. That,
totally.
Does this mean that, again, the typical, is she going to fall in love with someone else and going to leave me? Or
100%.
Like, is this the end of our relationship?
Yeah. And one concern Josh so clearly articulated at the beginning on the pier when we had the big clarification is he said, I'm worried I'm never going to be enough for you. And I was like, wow, but if we're poly, you don't need to be everything to me. You don't need to be enough. You know, we can connect exactly where we connect and build a life together and we can...
Yeah, because we're poly, you're always going to be enough because I'm going to get the other stuff from other people. So I'm never going to demand it from you. Yeah.
And so how the fuck do you start this process? You know when a cat has like gotten a mouse and then like brings it to you?
Yeah.
And you're like, thanks for this mouse. Thank you. But, you know, it's kind of, you're like, no, thank you, but thank you.
Yeah.
I really felt like that cat bringing a mouse, right? There was a situation at work. A bunch of us were out to drinks. One of the coworkers was like, hey, I had a dream about you. And then after kind of like pushing on like what that dream was about, it ended up being about wanting to be intimate with me. And I was like, ooh. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, I have a mouse to bring to Aryn, right? And I texted Aryn and I was like, hey, I'm going to bring this person you know home. How do you feel about that? And Aryn was
you didn't say I'm going to, but you said we have an opportunity.
Yeah, we have an opportunity.
Yeah, like, you know, and I was like, I don't know if I'm interested in her.
Yeah, and like without asking her either, I'm assuming.
Oh, no, I asked the other person.
Oh, okay, you asked.
Oh, yeah.
And she was down.
She was super down.
She was down.
She was very down.
But then Josh was like, trust me, I think you'll like her energy. And I was like, okay,
but
I trust
you. Did you know her?
I'd met her once.
You met her once.
Okay. Yeah. And we had this incredible experience.
Oh, I love it.
It was beautiful.
So playful, so enjoyable, so sexy, so exciting. And that was in the night. Then we woke up in the morning, had more amazing, sexy, fun time exploring one another. And she was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I gotta go to work or do something else. And so she kind of was like, all right, I'm out of here. See you guys. And I remember having a completely normal rest of my day. We did all our normal things. And I remember at that evening being like, oh wow, nothing changed. Nothing about my connection with Aryn changed. Nothing really changed about how we existed.
I mean, if anything, you probably felt more connected.
100%.
I'm
Yeah, absolutely. But none of those fears actually didn't even rear their head, right? And that was a really cool first experience where this person who I was so deeply in love with, wanted to really create a future with, really dive deep with, this experience kind of didn't invalidate that. Aryn was like, hell yeah, this is awesome. And I was like, okay, I can do this, right? I can hang in this way with this person who I want to essentially fortify my connection with in any way, right? I don't want to challenge. I don't want anything to potentially take away from this thing that I saw had huge potential for both of us. Then the second experience was something that was equally as earth-shattering for both of us, which was a woman that we had both fell in love with at the same time, which happened not too long after that. I'll pass it to you.
Yeah. So Josh and I met the second woman that we connected with, and we connected with her so deeply on an intellectual level, on a romantic level, on a like life planning level. We wanted similar things in life. And
how did you meet?
We met her through friends at a like EDM concert thing in San Francisco, you know, and I remember diving into her PhD research in the middle of this EDM concert, and I was like, she's so smart. I love her. And then so yeah, we really that threw us for a loop, because it was we weren't expecting to fall in love and have like a wanting to have a 3-person relationship, but it quickly felt like that. And we had this rule that Josh and I would only hook up with women when we were together. And we still had that rule, but she started making us question that. We're like, wow, but she's so important. Like, why would we also limit her to only connect with us when we're together? So as we, this is a theme that as we met certain people, we started to realize that the barriers or rules that we had didn't make as much sense when we got to know them and built very meaningful relationships with them. And I think sometimes boundaries are helpful in the beginning to make you feel safe, but then you realize that the humanity of the person, or the unique dynamic that you have with the people, is possibly like needs to be recognized. And so like that turned into like this almost three-person relationship. But then Josh and I moved to New York, and logistically that meant that we basically like couldn't pursue being so connected with her.
Mm-hmm. How long had it been when you moved?
We were together for like 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, full triad experience, right? We were talking about what it would be like to get pregnant at the same time, all buy a house together, really having those future planning conversations about what it would be like to create a universe where we are super committed and super intertwined.
Yeah.
And it scared me, but it was interesting.
Yeah, it felt really, it was scary, but it felt so good, right? With this person that we cared about so much.
That's so awesome. I feel like triads are such a beautiful arrangement. I don't know, there's like masculine and feminine energy, and there's, you know, a friendship and like a group dynamic and all of that. And I know you guys are still friends with this person, right?
Totally.
Yeah,
Which I think is
she's
awesome.
still such a close friend of ours.
Yeah. And is she seeing other people, and that's why you don't have like a sexual or romantic relationship anymore? Or how did you transition out of that?
Yeah, I think when we transitioned to New York City, we just got caught up in the flow of being in New York. And after we separated, we just went less and less often, which meant that we couldn't really continue that relationship in the way that we had wanted to. And also, she had her own journey of polyamory and exploration that took her to, you know, a whole bunch of different constellations that were really cool.
Yeah, meeting her partners that she dove in with, and the Bay, which she did. Yeah.
That's so awesome that you guys had that triad experience. It sounds like it was amazing, but for people who might be trying it out, who might be struggling with that dynamic, what were some of the things that you found difficult?
Okay, I'll start off with one area that gave us a lot of confidence, which was just focusing on our connection with each other and staying really present. Because I think something that felt really difficult was, oh my God, this is such a weird thing. How are people going to accept us in the future? But if we just focused on, I really love spending time with this person. I really love thinking with this person. And I really love, you know, being in a relationship with Josh and thinking and feeling in the present moment. So let's just see where it goes. So staying present helped calm a lot of fears. And then the other, just to say one other thing that was challenging was we were all involved in a big friend group. And when the three of us started getting together, we hid our dynamic, our romantic and sexual side of our dynamic from our friend group. And that left a lot of friends feeling confused as to why we were not inviting them places. And I think that we could have been better or kinder or in the process.
So why did you choose not to tell your friends at first?
It was so new for us. We were like, oh my God, we're in a 3-person dynamic, question mark, how is this happening? But it felt good, but it's kind of scared us at the same time. And we just didn't have the confidence that it was a normal / okay thing that people would be okay with. So we hid it for like 2 months at least.
Yeah, and then eventually you came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there was this thing around like this other partner that we had didn't necessarily want to all of a sudden get approached by other friends in the friend group.
Being like, oh, you're hooking up with a couple. Do you want to hook up with us?
Exactly. So I think there was some of that. I think we were really lucky in our experience that it flowed really nicely. We were super compatible. It all flowed. Aryn she has very low anxiety in these sort of experiences. And because of kind of each of us as individuals, it made this happen much easier than I think it happens for a lot of people. I would say that we could have talked a lot more about it. It would have caused a lot less like harm. The harm that was caused was from not being clear, not communicating enough.
How did your friends react when you finally told them?
I remember one friend was like, oh my God, over here I thought being in a 2-person relationship was hard. And you guys are in a 3-person relationship. He was like, that's like going into trigonometry and I'm over here doing algebra. But everyone was positive. And honestly, by the end, they're like, oh my God, that makes so much more sense. We thought that you were just trying to ignore us.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey there, before we dive into the second part of this episode, I wanted to tell you that if you're loving this conversation and want even more, you'll probably want to join my Patreon. You'll get exclusive polycurious content, things like bonus interview clips, solo episodes where I share very personal stories, and follow-up interviews with guests so you can find out what's been going on in their lives since we last chatted. Plus, you'll have access to a monthly support group with other polycurious people. Or maybe you are looking for more personalized support because you are in the process of opening up your relationship, or you've been non-monogamous for a while, but you are feeling a bit lost in the trenches. If that sounds like you, I'd love to offer support as your relationship coach. If you're curious, you can book a free exploratory call with me. Links to both the Patreon and coaching are in the episode description. Now, let's get back to the show.
I'm trying to think of like what are the other areas that were difficult and then have become less difficult now. I think there's something interesting around do the thing that feels right. Don't do the thing that triggers all the insecurities or all the things that are difficult.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Start with what works. Like I kind of use a metaphor of being like how you can explore just like a bunch of dials, and you can turn down any of the dials that are really painful, and you can focus on just what works.
Yeah, and then you can move to the more painful ones, right? But I think people sometimes just jump into it and they really want to make the triad work or whatever. In your case, you felt really connected and it was all great. But other people are like, oh, I really want to make this work. And they're feeling triggered, they're feeling insecure, and they don't honor that. And they're like, oh, exposure therapy. I got to get through it and it's going to get easier. And, I always approach opening up like that, like do the least threatening thing, do what feels right, and then eventually you can move on to what doesn't feel that easy. And actually, on that note, one of the things we wanted to talk about is your transition from not being okay with Aryn hooking up with men to overcoming that one penis policy and feeling better about that, which was very intimidating to you. So I would love to hear how that process was for both of you.
When we started off the relationship, I was like, I'm open to all the varieties of how this could possibly look. I might need some time for some of them. And Aryn sleeping with other men fell into that category. For me in the beginning, the way that Aryn would describe it to me was that it's like a cherry on top. We don't have to do it now, but we can look in the future, and if we're thinking about our relationship as something that has like an incredibly long timeline, then there's no rush, and we work with what is working, right? We had this rich experience with other women, and that was like very fulfilling and took a lot of our attention. And so, for multiple years, that just wasn't something that came up again. And it was a few years into New York that Aryn said, hey, I'm kind of interested in exploring with men. Like, I just want to say that. Like, it's not an immediate thing, but at some point, that's something that I want to get back on the map, right? And for me, I had my own experience of trying to understand where my resistance was. When she said, hey, I'm interested in doing this, I put a little note in my mind. I was like, okay, how can we facilitate this? If I'm not bi, it's not actually kind of difficult for this opportunity to arise. If we're spending a lot of time with one another, if there's not a lot of space for other men to be flirty and hang out with Aryn independently. And I really felt like I was at a point where I had to just get over my shit, right? I had such a rich, beautiful, and fulfilling experience with these other partners that we were having that I really felt incredibly selfish, right? I felt like a hypocrite. And I told Aryn, I said, hey, Aryn, do you know what? I'm ready for this. Like, I'm ready for this. I'm open to you exploring this, and I feel really good about that. Fast forward a year after I told that to Aryn, and we're in like a small interaction with a group of people, and Aryn kind of subtly revealed that she hadn't flirted with someone because she didn't want to make me upset. And that felt very rough for me to hear. And that interaction with Aryn shifted me because I didn't want to be a hypocrite. And I knew that it was, even with permission, still difficult to kind of get over the hump for it to actually happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had some like kind of hiccups along the way where I was like, in that year, I was like, hey, I have this opportunity to make out with someone, but I was like texting Josh and it felt rushed to him. And, or in that particular moment, I didn't hear back from him. So even though he had said yes, but we had this language that we would check in before. And I was like, well, that language of checking in before also meant that if I didn't hear back from him, I couldn't do it. And so that was like just creating enough of a barrier.
And then Josh was like, why didn't you do it? Or
like it was like 2 days later, he was like, man, I wish you had just done that. And I was like, well, I couldn't because we had this agreement that we would check in before, like right before.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because it's great to have those agreements, but there's also a level, and we were talking about this before, of just understanding that you can intuitively kind of know. Like, for example, with my relationship with Seth, there's certain things that we hadn't really discussed, but I'm just like, okay, I feel in my body that he wouldn't be okay with this or he would not be okay with this. So I had a situation, for example, the other day where, he's always said it's okay for me to hook up with someone at a party. But I had an opportunity where I could also have sex with this person because I wasn't going back home that night anyway. So I ended up like staying like where the party was with this person who like happened to be someone I used to date. We weren't dating anymore, but like I felt a vibe that night. So I went ahead and, had sex with this person, slept over, and then went back home. And then afterwards I was like, hold on. We never talked about this. Like he said, it was okay for me to like kiss and stuff, but like we've never talked about like, oh, can I then go and have sex and come back home and like not tell you about it and like pretend it didn't happen. But I kind of knew that he wouldn't care. So that's why I went ahead and did it. But then afterwards I was like, hey babe, like I just want to talk to you because I realized that I don't know if I crossed a boundary, but we hadn't talked about this, and I went ahead and did it. And he was like, no, it's fine. And you don't need to tell me. And it's all good. So I kind of knew.
Yeah.
So like, I understand that you shouldn't cross boundaries or anything, but it also comes to a point where you are like, okay, I'm pretty sure that this would be okay. Right. And especially when you've been many years together, right? Like Seth and I have been 6 years together. At the beginning, I would have never done that. Like at the beginning, it's very important to respect all of that. But now I just kind of intuitively know what he's okay with and what he's not okay with. So sometimes it's okay to maybe go with your gut feeling and then, afterwards be like, hey, I did this. Was it okay? And sure, maybe they'll be like, no, and it'll be a huge fight. So you also have to be careful.
Yeah, it's surprising how much gray area there is when you have these rules about checking in and how that could really make you unsure. But I love that you have the trust and intuition, and that worked for you and Seth.
Yeah, but I do think that it's something that you build because
totally.
even in the story that you're telling, that you weren't even flirting with men, even though Josh already had told you that it was okay. That also happens sometimes where they tell you it's okay for you to do this thing, but because at one point they told you that it wasn't okay, and then you assume that they said that it was okay just to please you or something, but they're actually not fully okay with it or whatever. Like, we also need to believe our partners when they say, I'm okay with this, which can also be hard because sometimes people say they're okay with things that they're not okay with.
Exactly.
But that's kind of the basics. Like, you have to speak your truth and you have to believe what the other person is saying. Otherwise, you can't be like guessing, like playing a guessing game.
I mean, and I would say that that's so easy to articulate, but actually very difficult to do, right? For people to feel that comfortable where they can really know and speak their truth, I think it's still sometimes it's difficult, right? I think we've been in multiple situations with other partners and with each other where we thought we had that clarity and, we've had to like reassess or come back to it, or we didn't realize that there was an element of it that we needed to dive deeper into and ask more questions about.
Yeah, and mistakes are going to happen, right? Like, you can have a list of agreements and boundaries and you'll forget something. Every situation is different. So I think it's also about like knowing that you are going to mess up and also not getting, or your partner is going to mess up and also not getting like too attached to the mistake and just being like, okay, well, what did we learn from that? Okay, now we know this boundary. We didn't know this boundary because there hadn't been that situation. Now we know. It's all good.
Which is amazing, right? I think like we're so much more resilient than we think we are, right? That our relationships, the people that we actually are committed with and exploring with, that we can actually handle so much more. And that this stuff, sometimes the fear of it is devastating, but the actual experience of it isn't. And so how can you take a little bit more liberty? How can you be charitable to one another? And how can we give each other grace as we're exploring these things that are inherently crunchy if you've never done them before? And so that experience we've gone through ins and outs of that, where we've learned that we had to give each other more grace. We learned that we needed to be more flexible. We dialed down the things that didn't work, dialed up the things that did, and then we actually just kept moving forward, right?
Yeah,
we learned quickly.
A constant
fine-tuning, for sure.
Fine-tuning, exactly. And I also understand for people who don't want to do that work, because as you said, like sometimes the experience is less threatening than what's in your head. But at the same time, it is a lot of work to figure out exactly the relationship that works for you, right? And like some people are in for the work.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like are down to do it, and some people are like, oh, I can't be bothered, and that's also fine. If like you are totally the type of person who's like, oh no, too many conversations. Like I don't like that.
We get that all the time. We get people who are like, oh my god, that sounds like terrible to have to do all the talking that you have to do.
Yeah,
and I was like, hey, if that's the thing that stands out in your mind after hearing this, then you for sure shouldn't do this.
Yeah,
This is definitely...
you have to. I mean, I love talking, hence I have this podcast and stuff, and I love getting deep, and I love like improving the relationship and, you know, messing up and then like fixing it and being like, oh, we did this together. I got to know you better. Like I love that shit, but I also understand.
Some people don't.
Like, no, thanks.
And Josh, I think you had more to your like evolution of your story with how you realized that you needed to encourage me and like very like emotionally support me being with other men me, because I was so afraid of hurting you that I was stopping myself. And I needed to feel your support.
I think then I just thought that by saying, hey, Aryn, you have permission now to do this, that was enough. And I think in our dynamic, and in a lot of people's dynamic, that's not enough, right? Especially if it's something that has been triggering in the past, has brought up a lot of conflict. No, you have to actually really care a lot about how it's going to happen, right? Because the last thing that Aryn wants to do is hurt me or cause any harm on me. And so I had to go through my own process of being like, okay, well, I don't want to be a hypocrite. It's really important for this to be equitable in the way in we're showing up and the opportunities that we're having to experience pleasure and richness. And Aryn had done so much. She had met me with such openness and care and modeled such an incredible way for me to push my own boundaries and edges for her that I felt so obligated to rise and really meet the challenge.
What were some of the things that she had done?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, anytime there was a gray area where I think that if it would have happened in reverse, I would have been super upset. Aryn met me with a lot of curiosity, wanting to hear how I actually felt. All that stuff actually modeled for me how it needed to be reciprocated. And I was paying very close attention, right? Because I cared a lot about that. I cared a lot about Aryn having as rich experiences as I was having, because they were also so fucking generative for me. It helped me define my identity. It helped me understand myself better. Literally, being with other partners taught me how to be a better partner to Aryn. And I was seeing all this residual positive effects. And when I felt myself withholding those opportunities from Aryn because of insecurity or fear, I was like, oh, fuck no. I need to totally switch this around. I want Aryn to have the same amount of benefits that I experienced. After I saw Aryn say that she couldn't even flirt because she didn't want me to be upset, after I'd been a year ready for this to happen, I was like, fuck, okay, I need to make this happen. What are the ways in which I can make this happen? And one way that is a very common and a way that I definitely recommend if you're going to start exploring with other males in the dynamic is to just go date another couple. Right? There's like an equalness there that feels really nice.
Right. It helps to calm your jealousy.
The threatening nature
when
of
you
it.
have the threatening nature too. Actually, I didn't even think about that, but it's like that person has another partner who's present here, so like there's no risk of them stealing my girlfriend or whatever, and also I can't fully be jealous because I'm also hooking up with this beautiful woman right here. Yeah,
precisely. There's like that evenness that feels like really attention. It takes up all the attention, right? So went on field, was looking for another couple, right? Who would be an awesome other couple that we can kind of do this exploration with? We ended up matching with a couple and planned, schemed, trying to figure out what's a good time for us to meet. We'll get a drink. It'll be super casual. Great. The husband and wife, we meet them at a bar, and they were talking about how just a week prior, they had planned to hook up with another couple, and it fell through. And so the story that he was relaying to us was that, you know, he was so excited. Him and his partner were so excited to have this really exciting sexual experience with this other couple. And they were feeling really fun and connected. And they had done a few dates. For every single date, they were like, are we going to hook up? Are we going to hook up? Are we going to hook up? And it never happened. And the week before we met them, it was the time that they were going to hook up, and they were so amped. They like both shaved each other to make sure that they were like very ready and prepared. And they go to this other person's house. They had a hot tub on their roof. And it just so happened that as the two women were kind of running off to the hot tub naked, the other guy of the other couple leaned over to the people that we were, you know, having a cocktail with and said, I've always wanted to fuck a dancer. And that caused this couple to essentially say, why would you say that?
Like, because they feel like he was flirting.
Totally. No, he was just like objectifying his wife in a way that really turned him off instantly into the scenario.
Like, instead of seeing her as a person, he wanted to check the box of hooking up with a dancer.
Yes.
It seemed belittling.
And so it was just funny, right? Because we're out to cocktails. They're relaying the story about how they didn't have sex with this other couple that they were going to explore with.
Because the guy they were going to have sex with made a comment about her.
Yes, exactly.
Being and then a dancer.
And then he kind of was like, sorry, we can't do this. And they ended up leaving. And that's them relaying that to us, and that we're the next couple that they've decided to kind of engage with. And it was like in that moment that I realized that my issues with men is that I don't trust men.
Oh.
Because the moment with this couple that the man told me that story, I was like, in my head, I was like, Aryn can do whatever the fuck she wants with this guy. This guy's awesome. He gets like exactly how I would have reacted in that scenario.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I was like, oh, holy shit. And I went through my own journey of understanding and having to reflect about my own distrust of men in general. Right? And that my resistance to Aryn being intimate, all the agitation that I experienced was so much around I didn't trust men.
You didn't trust them to what?
To take care of Aryn the way that I think she deserved to be treated. Just that person telling me that story, and all of a sudden, all those fears dissipating with that person really showed me that it's actually who Aryn is with that I care about more than it being a man. And then I had to go through another journey of just knowing that Aryn has really good taste in people.
Right. I was going to say, like, you don't trust men, but maybe you can trust that she can pick the right. Yeah, you find the good ones. I mean, we've been dealing with men for longer. That's like at some point you
got to just trust.
Yeah, you do have some missteps, but at some point you're like, okay, like now I know which ones are the good ones. And then they fucking always surprise you. No, I'm kidding.
But I think that was for me.
It helped you build
that unlocked a lot for me, right?
Yeah.
When
awesome.
I was able to be like, oh, the shit that I'm projecting onto the scenario is my own thing that I need to process and work on and get better at and deal with. And then obviously the next follow-on was just being like, hey, actually Aryn's really good at finding people who are awesome.
Yeah. So did you hook up with that couple?
We did.
And
it was fucking awesome.
I love that.
And we still like them, and we're friends with them.
Oh, that's awesome. And how was the actual experience of it, like seeing her being fucked by someone else?
Super fun. I mean, that's not the thing that really gets me excited. So that's not my thing.
It wasn't a turn on, but it wasn't a trigger either.
It wasn't a trigger. Yeah, exactly. So
Cool.
that was awesome, right? I was like, oh, this felt kind of going back to that first experience of the mouse me bringing, right? It was like, oh, actually, this does not affect our relationship, has no negative consequences, and it gets to be really generative and fun and playful, right?
Yeah.
And then that opened, that created more of a crack, and then we were able to kind of continue and explore from there, and that experience being such an awesome experience.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how did things evolve from there? When did you start dating other men separately?
Mm-hmm. It took a few more evolutions. I think, one theme that's been interesting has been like sometimes we feel like rules or boundaries can help make us feel safe. And then sometimes we start to realize, oh, they're actually like inhibiting us more. So after Josh and I had the good experience with dating the couple, maybe 6 months to a year later, I got Josh on the phone and I was like, hey, this guy's coming over. I think I like him. I think he likes me. If I tell him about you and us and everything checks out, can I hook up with him? And Josh objectively was like, that sounds okay, but I feel too rushed to make this decision. I don't feel comfortable. You're rushing me. And I was like, okay, I guess it won't happen. But then Josh sat with it for like 20 minutes, called me back and was like, Aryn, I want you to have a good time.
Yeah. And how was that experience?
I mean, again, it was fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
It was just not a non-issue.
Yeah.
Right? Like, actually, again, this is another one of those things where as you got closer to it, it became scary.
Yeah.
But then when you just had a second, breathed, and then it started to happen and it happened, you're like, oh, actually, that was the non-issue.
Yeah, and there's so much that we need to get over. Like, for me, it was this fear that there was something wrong in my relationship whenever I had feelings for someone else. And I would freak out. I'd be like, oh man, like, am I going to break up with Seth? Am I going to want to go on trips or spend more time with this person and Seth is not going to be okay with it? I would like get ahead of myself. But my relationship with Seth was like totally fine. Everything was fine. But it's just this idea of if you have feelings for someone other than your partner, that means that there's something wrong with your partnership. And then you do it and then you're like, oh no, actually I can have feelings for someone and my relationship is good. Oh, it's fine. But you sometimes, even if you know it in your head, you have to go through the experience to feel it in your body. And sometimes, yes, the experience is threatening and terrible and whatever, and you learn. But as you said, I think most of the times it's worse in your head than in reality.
Absolutely.
And you just have to figure things out,
Yeah, totally. And again, if we're going on themes of like the relationship is actually super resilient, there's something really important here on modeling, right? Like if you look at every new experience that you're experiencing, for instance, if Aryn does something that I didn't really expect and I have a triggering feeling, how I handle that conflict is an opportunity for me to have that reciprocated. So it's really cool to really own that and go, what is the best way that I could possibly handle this?
Yeah, how would I want her to handle this for me?
Exactly. Because that's going to happen. In these spaces, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Something nuanced happens. Something unexpected happens. Somebody drops the ball on a boundary or there's some confusion. And so if you look at it as an opportunity to model a way that you would want to be reciprocated, it really helps. It's really helpful. And Aryn had done such an incredible job at continuously modeling for me incredible ways about receiving highly charged, highly difficult concepts that I would have struggled with. I really felt obligated to do a really good job in reciprocating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I love that. We haven't really gotten to talk about this, but you guys were part of couples therapy, the show, not just the therapy, although you did go to therapy on camera for the show. So just for people who are not familiar, the show films, mostly couples, I think, right?
Only couples.
Only
Yeah,
except
us.
Only 3-person dynamic polycule on the show.
Yes, exactly.
Otherwise, it's real couples going to real therapy.
Yeah, which is fascinating. And when you guys filmed that, it was also the therapy was also with Lorena, who's Josh's ex-partner, but at that point partner. So the reason why I'm bringing up the show is because one of the things that comes up there is that, Aryn, you are very accommodating, right? I was curious about that, kind of related to what you were saying, Josh, that like she's modeled such like kindness and compassion and all of that. A lot of people are people pleasers. And how do you deal with that in a dynamic like the one you have? Like, have you found that sometimes you are too much of a people pleaser and like too okay, but you're actually maybe not that okay with things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do think I have a high degree of people pleasing and a high degree of accommodating and wanting to adapt. And it makes it really hard for me to set clear boundaries. But I also think the flip side of it is I'm genuinely so open to a lot of possibilities and how dynamics will emerge. And I think it takes away a lot of the acute stress of any situation because I realize it's about, you know, my true happiness, Josh's true happiness. And while situations may come up that don't feel good, I sort of have this really long-term vision of like, is this really going to matter in like a few years? Like, is this particular thing, you know? So it feels like simultaneously people pleasing, but also like a existential resiliency. And honestly, it's also hard for me to differentiate when I'm being which, because I think one is bad and one is good.
Yeah, one is like, I'm going to be fine no matter what. I don't need to control every little single thing.
Exactly.
And the other one is, yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
But
And I'm just saying it's fine.
Yeah.
So that I don't create a tense situation for me or Josh's partner.
Yeah.
You know, how do I deal with that? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that just by recognizing that there's a distinction there and that there's some positives, like Josh seeing you being so accommodating made him want to also be very accommodating and kind and all of those things, but also knowing that you can slip into the people-pleasing arena or the like not honoring your truth arena.
Totally.
But so I think that's
and something that actually the show did help me recognize. We did psychological evaluations before the show, and the therapist before the show even started said, Aryn, probably the most important thing for you to realize about your own psyche is that when you feel something is a 4 out of 10 important or tense, it's probably would have been a 9 out of 10 importance for someone else. And so you should say something when something starts to get a 4 out of 10 important or stressful. And so I've been trying to say, you know, what I'm feeling at a sooner time, you know, and then Josh and I have been discussing this, and Josh has also flagged it in his mind. Oh, if Aryn's bringing something up, that means that I need to actually listen more.
Yeah, even if she's chill about it.
Even if I'm chill about it, Josh has leveled up his, I need to hear this as louder than Aryn is saying it.
Yeah, because she's not the loud type.
I'm not, and I won't say it loudly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. After having had that experience in the show, is there anything that you guys want to share?
Wow, so many things.
Yeah, I mean, the experience was really tough, right? It was super intense, and the reason why we went on the show, there was a few, right? Number one, we've seen Orna's work. We saw her in previous seasons, right?
The therapist.
Yeah, the therapist, exactly. And so we're on season 4, and we saw previous seasons, and we were really impressed by how she was portrayed in the show, and we were really impressed and wanted and craved. That's what we called like ninja-ing, like an Orna ninja attack on us, right? Which was, you know, there's so many times in the show where she's so perceptive and so hyper aware about what was happening in the dynamics, and we wanted that, right? As somebody who really craves personal development and kind of being the best version of myself that I could try and achieve, for me, that was a really attractive thing, right? There was also this thing where, like, we live in New York City, things are really expensive. Orna is very expensive, right? And in exchange for going on the show and having them edit it however they want to edit it, you get 6 months of therapy weekly, right? Which is not something that we could have afforded, right? And so that was another element of it. Right? Is it worth having a narrative about us cut up and edited in whatever way they want. Is that worth it to actually do that deep work on ourselves and go through that gauntlet? And we thought it was worth it.
And
right?
you feel okay with the way that you guys were portrayed?
There were a lot of like ups and downs. And I would say, I think, quite honest, I don't feel good about some things in the show. I don't like that the most difficult things in our relationship and the things that I'm least proud of are on the show. But I still feel like it was an interesting experience, and I'm glad for the things that we did learn. And that probably still made it worth it.
Okay, well, we'll definitely do a part 2 because this
cool.
has been a really wonderful conversation, and we literally ran out of time. We have someone waiting to access the studio. But before I wrap up, just very quickly, what would you tell to a polycurious person listening to the show?
I would say take things slow, but know that you are resilient, and that know that hiccups will happen. People will feel hurt, but try to take more time to understand each other, care for each other, and just go for the interesting path forward with care and love for all the humans that you're interacting with.
Amen.
I love that. Yeah, I would say that, every time that there is a conflict or things don't go the way that you expect, it's a chance for you to model how you wish to be treated. And if you hold yourself to that really high standard, then you leave space for a lot of charitableness, a lot of grace, and a lot of warmth as you guys are exploring, things that are just honestly inherently difficult and complex. And so I think I echo that about resilience. I think we are so much more resilient than we give ourselves credit for. And have fun, right? Have fun, talk a lot, communicate, and be introspective and willing to improve. And you can have really incredible experiences with people who are wonderful.
Yeah, it's all an opportunity to grow and learn and live life at its fullest. Well, thank you so much. This has been truly wonderful.
Thank you so much
for having us.